experience in organization and various things. Now, as we talk about these things, we are emphasizing that we need to be part of really the solution to the issues we meet in organizations. Therefore, I present to you this PowerPoint, which is already on our WhatsApp chat. You'll be able to see it there. Why I sent it there is that you may want to download a few of the sites that I've referred to in this presentation. So we're looking at organizational behavior. We are introducing the understanding of the concept of organizational behavior. We are seeking to understand what is organizational behavior. You know, we are asking ourselves, when we talk about companies, when you talk about institutions, when you talk about organizations, we are asking ourselves, what are the issues? What are the main issues that punctuate these organizations? What are the main issues that punctuate these institutions? So as we look at organizational behavior, just a moment, bear with me just a moment. Yeah, I had missed this out. Just a moment, please. Good. So as we look at organizational behavior, what comes to our mind, first of all, is to understand what organizational behavior is. As I've said, we are welcoming one another to look at what happens in organizations. Some of you are heads of schools. Some of you could be departmental heads in your schools. Some of you, I noticed from your philosophies of life, some of you work in financial institutions. Some of you work in various NGOs. Some of you are classroom teachers. In one way or another, we are involved in some form of organizations. That's why I welcome us all to think about these questions. I would like us to think deeply about the 4 issues I've placed in this slide. First, let's ask ourselves, why do organizations exist? Why do organizations exist? You know, why do we have a school? Why do we have a bank? Why do we have that NGO? Why do we have, even within our school, why do we have a department? And so forth. Maybe by a show of hands, how many of you would like to join in on this and just respond to that first question? Reasons why organizations exist. Why? Why do organizations exist? Yes? Anybody? I've seen some hand over there. Did I see some hand? Yes, the hand of Helen. Helen?
Yes, I just want to make a trial.
Yes.
There could be so many reasons, definitely, for an organization existing,
Yes.
whereby we categorize them into in terms of maybe profit organizations, those who seek to make profits or to sell a product in order to generate some revenue, or we have those organizations which are not for profit, which are seeking to solve a problem in the society. So in one way or the other, organizations have a solution to a problem in the society that they're seeking to solve.
So Helen, you are telling us that there are issues in the society and organizations exist to attend to those issues, to provide solutions, to provide some intended objective. Very well. Madiang, why do we have organizations? Why do organizations exist?
Yeah, thanks. I had this last statement you've made plus expounding on what Helen has said, I wanted to share specifically for our organization that it exists to help solve women's and children's health issues and attain equity. So essentially, with the summary of providing solutions to existing health issues amongst a cohort of underprivileged women and children. So you've captured it in that last summary, and I align with Helen too. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madiang. Nyabere, why do organizations exist?
Happy New Year, Dr. Kegode.
Happy New Year to you, Nyabere. How have you been?
Very well, sir. And I'm happy to, I'm happy that you are again back with us. You remember last time, I am the one who said that when I grow up, I want to be like you, because I was thinking you might not teach us again. So I'm one of the people who are very happy that you are back again with us, this unit. And I look forward to having a very fulfilling session this time round. So to answer your question, my thinking is human beings by nature are social beings. And individuals are cognizant of the fact that they need other people to complement their lives. So naturally, people will coalesce, they will come together, especially when they have a common objective to achieve, and therefore they create organizations. My 2 cents.
Very well, very well. So there are objectives. Obadiah, what are reasons why organizations exist?
Yeah, good evening, Prof. Thank you for the opportunity. And I think I will just have to stress a bit on whatever my colleagues have said before. And I'm looking at it from a broader perspective about organizations. I believe that they exist to achieve a specific target, maybe by efficiently coordinating and also leveraging the skills, effort, and resources. And I'm looking at it from a church as an organization. When a church is an organization, it means that it has a target, and maybe that is we can say edifying one another, and also maybe encouraging one another in the journey of faith, like a school as well. A school has a target. And a hospital as an organization, it has a target. UN as an organization has a target to meet. So in a nutshell, it's just a philosophical movement. Also, the people that have come together so that they may particularly meet their target.
Thank you very much, Obada. Cindy, finally, what is some of the reasons why organizations exist?
Hi, Prof.
Hi.
What I would say is that based on what everyone has said, then generally, people in the society have needs. And so I would say the reason why organizations exist is basically to meet the various needs of people in the society. For example, people need to go to school, so we have institutions. People have need for medication, so we have the hospitals to provide such services, and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that organizations exist to meet the needs of people in the society.
Very well, Cindy. Stephen, finally, Stephen. Stephen, can you hear us? Stephen, your microphone is muted. Okay, Stephen perhaps cannot be able to hear us. So we continue. Now, given what we have more or less shared, we seem to have responded to the first and second concern. That is, reasons why organizations exist vis-a-vis the importance of organizational behavior. That if those are the reasons why organizations exist, then there'll be need for understanding how those organizations must figure out, must relate out, how relations in those organizations have to be featured out so that those organizations can be able to meet their defined objectives. But then look at the third bullet over there. And the third bullet is talking about asking us to think deeply about the challenges workers face in those organizations, at the workplace. The challenges workers will face, say teachers will face in a school, people who work in a bank will face in that workplace, those who work in NGOs, challenges they'll face in their workplace. We also think about the challenges those workers will face at home when they leave the workplace, the challenges they face at home when they leave the workplace. Then to think deeply, really a personalized thought. Do you think the challenges workers face at home, be it with the immediate or extended family, should be of any concern to an organization? You work in that bank as a manager, a head of a division. You work in that school as a class teacher. You work in that school as a head teacher, as a head of department. You work in that NGO as a team leader. You work there in whatever category. The question we are raising is, do you think the challenges the workers face in their homes, away from the workplace, should be of any concern to the organization? A few responses would do, maybe 3 this time. A few responses. Gaki?
Thank you, Doc. Thinking through this particular question, I think there are 2 sides of it. I would say to depend with the case at hand or even the situation. There are those cases that it's good for the organization to know. I'll give a personal example that I had at within the term. I'm a teacher. So, for example, a case of a child being ill, and now you need to communicate because things need to be done within the institution. You cannot just let it be personal because there are documentations that you need to prove that you actually went to the hospital and you're not the one who was sick, but the child. So there are particular issues that the organization would need to know, but there are others that would be considered rather personal that might not need the attention of the organization. Thank you.
Very well, Gaki. Florence, you'd like to add your voice on this. Do you think about the challenges workers face at the workplace? Think about the challenges workers face outside the workplace. Do you think an organization should be concerned about the issues workers face outside the organization, e.g. the family? Florence?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll base my argument on several things that as a society we want to achieve. So I'll take probably 3 examples. One is, as a country, we want to ensure that we reduce under 5 mortality. And one of the things that we push women to do is exclusive breastfeeding. Now, if we have a maternity leave of 3 months and exclusive breastfeeding is encouraged for the first 6 months, then it means the organization, if we were to push this conversation further, so that there's collective responsibility for organizations in ensuring the well-being of the workers' children, that is when you will start seeing, organizations putting creches, understanding that sometimes your house girl will leave in the morning and leave you with a child and you still have to work. So to facilitate the worker to deliver at the workplace. If we look at the issue of maternal health, again, you find organizations, and I'll use this example like EABL, which has pushed maternity leave to be 6 months and paid maternity leave, recognizing the fact that a woman needs to recuperate after giving birth so that she can be able to give her best at the workplace. And then, of course, there's an organization that I know of that also has given, you can take 6 months leave and then you take a whole year, but you take the other 6 months, you take half pay. And so you have a choice so that you can deliver for the organization. And then lastly, domestic violence. This is one issue, and intimate partner violence. These are conversations that we're having in the country at the moment, that if an organization does not know that one of the workers is facing a particular challenge, then issues to do with counseling will not be something that the organization thinks about as one of the things to put either in the medical cover or to ensure that the medical cover speaks to matters mental health. So yes, it is important for organizations to know some of the challenges that workers face that would affect their delivery at the workplace. Thank you.
Very well, Florence. So we are underlining in your contribution the fact that an organization needs to be concerned about the challenges its workers face outside the organization, not only for the good of those workers, but indeed also for the good of the organization. So that we're trying to say in your words that if the organization will be disinterested, not concerned about the welfare, or not really the welfare, but rather what happens to the workers or the challenges the workers face outside the organization, then it is not only true that those workers would suffer, but it is indeed true also the organization would suffer. So this is something really moving together. Maybe for the 2 or so hands remaining, I want to invite you to reflect on the final question. Challenges. Think about the challenges managers face at the workplace. I want to hear about the challenges managers face at the workplace. The
And
challenges managers, is somebody talking?
Yeah, Dr. Kegode, this is Madiang. I wanted to ask if there will be an opportunity to ask a question. That's why my hand is up. Okay.
Yes, you're going to get in. So think about the challenges that managers face at the workplace. Think also about the challenges managers face at home. And of course, at the global level, you are thinking about globalization, you are thinking about competition, in the global world, and company managers, organization managers, leaders are involved in that competition. So we're putting the question again. You see, the third question concerned the worker. This fourth question is concerning the manager, the leader, as it were. So we're putting it. Do you think also this should be of concern to us? The challenges that managers face at the workplace, the challenges that the managers face at home and at the global level, that is to say, outside the workplace and at home. Do you think this need to be of concern to our organizations? Any response to that, please? Any response to that? I can see Chris' hand up. Chris?
Yes, Dr. Yes, it should be a matter of concern for the teachers in the group. Allow me to use you, and more particularly our beautiful ladies. I'm taking example of a principal, or not just a teacher, who has come from a violent family, a challenge at home, and more particularly a principal, a deputy principal, who is a lady, and she comes in school in the morning and she has quarreled with the husband at home. And this is something that we've seen. And then she extends the quarrel to the colleagues in the office or even in the boardroom and to the students. And therefore, it becomes chaotic as a manager to be able to control the school because of internal wrangles back at home. And therefore, it hampers the leadership style of this particular manager at workplace. And therefore, yes, it is a concern that both macro and micro challenges facing a particular manager could be of a very serious concern at workplace. Thank you.
Very well, Chris. I think that is well noted. Muthoni, you'd like to add your voice to this?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. I'm thinking about the workplace, and there's this common challenge that most managers face, and it's all about decreased work performance. That's a big challenge at the workplace. That's what I have for now.
Decreased work
performance.
Yes, at the workplace. So those things, there are some of the things that we'll be looking at. So as we think about those questions, these questions, that is reasons why organizations exist. That first question gives us the idea that there are objectives to be met, there are targets to be met. Organizations exist to meet those targets, to meet those objectives. When we think about the importance of organizational behavior, we are thinking of there should be some ordering within an organization that will enable an organization arrive at its intended targets. When we think about 3 and 4, the challenges workers face, the challenges that managers face, all these things tell us that there must be a symbiotic relationship between what goes on in an organization and what goes on within the people who work within that organization. At this point, I'm careful not to use the terminology, the people who work for the organization. But before we make a development, I think Madiang had a question. Madiang, at this point, we invite you.
Yeah, and thank you very much. It's based on the third and fourth bullet. Yes. And I think Florence also did articulate one of the responsibilities that the organization is kind of being requested to look at. But one of the interests that I have in this topic is particularly the effect of automation, or rather the significance of automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and digitization that is increasingly being pushed by organizations, partly to mitigate the problems of managing human behaviors, like, with all due respect, what Florence said. And also because, if I recall Helen's contribution as to why organizations exist, she mentioned the element of making profits. And it does seem that the trends we are having is that one of the ways of improving the bottom line is to reduce the number of human beings involved, so that the organization may basically be efficient, so to speak. It is as if it is tiring to deal with human issues. So I do hope that we will get an opportunity to discuss the extent to which this automation, AI, digitization, and robotics will be replacing humans and how that affects organizational behavior. Thanks, and back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madiang, and we'll be talking about that. We'll be inviting in due course for people to comment on those issues as the course proceeds. Now, having looked at those issues about our concerns about organizations, then in summary, you know, what this discussion this evening is concerned with is to help us get a clear conceptualization of what organizational behavior is, to try and address that word. What is organizational behavior? That concern should help us understand the nature and the main features of organizational behavior, to understand what organizational behavior is. Secondly, once we understand what organizational behavior deals with, then we must move in to go into what I would define as the world of work, what we've just been questioning about, and to try and delve into understanding the contrasting perspectives on the various orientations towards work and work ethics. When we talk about work, when you talk about work ethics, we've had people talk about some people being workaholic. And it seems to us that if you are an organizational leader, a leader in an organization, it seems easily to be understood that if you are to have many of your workers being workaholic, you may want to say you'll be happy. But along our discussions, we'll be trying to look at it and say, is that the best way to go? Is it healthy for an organization to have people who are a workaholic and so forth? And then thirdly, to be able now to look at what sometimes I call the unwritten word, what would call the psychological contract, the promises that an organization, either as an institution or through its leaders, make to its workers. What is the nature of such promises? Especially, what is the impact of such promises? There are not written rules. For example, a manager tells workers that if you come to work 2 hours early, or rather 1 hour early, or if you leave work two hours later or 1 hour later, I'll be able to do this. I'll give you 500 shillings and so forth. It is not written anywhere, but you make that promise. When you are teachers in a school and the principal or the board of management comes and say, for every teacher who produces an A in his or her subject, the board will give 1,000 shillings or something of that kind. It is not written anywhere. You cannot take your principal to court that you never gave the 1,000. But grant that you never delivered that 1,000 for every A that a teacher who taught history produced. What would be the impact on that organization, on that school? So the psychological contracts within organizations. We also talking about the task performance and recognition for the performance of those tasks. We're talking about things that border on promotions within an organization. How are people promoted within the organization? What is the yardstick of promoting people? Is promotion good for the worker who is promoted, or good for the organization, or both, and to what extent? That discussion will be leading us to talk about two principles, or rather theories, what we call the Peter principle that concerns task performance, and the Parkinson law that concerns our ability to recognize what people do within the organization, be it rewarding them through gifts, be it rewarding them through promotions, and so forth. We'll be looking at those things in this kind of discussion. So to begin us off, let us then look at what organizational behavior is all about. What is organizational behavior? That as we begin, what is organizational behavior? Before perhaps we move on, I can see the hand of Juliet Otieno up. Maybe Juliet, you have an intervention, please. Juliet? Juliet, do you have an intervention? Maybe Juliet forgot her hand up. We assume so and make progress. So we are trying to understand what organizational behavior is. What is organizational behavior? So when we talk about organizational behavior, generally, organizational behavior, is a new emerging field in organizational leadership and management, which tries to integrate really the behavioral sciences that we have. Behavioral sciences, things like psychology, things like anthropology, and so forth. It integrates these behavioral sciences so as to help us to be able to understand, to be able to predict, to be able to manage, control human behavior within organizations with an aim of achieving the goal of that organization. So perhaps the most critical word for me here is not the word controlling human behavior, but is the words organizational behavior is a science, is an art that helps us to understand. That word to understand is critical. To predict, the second word there, to predict. I would say, and perhaps to manage, but I would not really underline control. So to understand, to predict, and to some degree, manage human behavior within an organization. Why do we do this? So that an organization can be able to achieve its set objectives and the goals. So that's very important. So you see, organizational behavior comes to us as an art, as a science that uses humanistic sciences, uses behavioral sciences to help us to know what happens in an organization. Why do leaders in an organization behave the way they behave? Why do workers behave the way they behave? Can we be able to predict what the organizational leadership is likely to do? Can we be able to predict what the workers are likely to do? Can we be able to control or rather manage certain human behaviors, especially when the interests or the goals, the objectives of an organization are at risk? Those are some of the issues that come up when we are trying to understand what the science organizational behavior is all about. So that the concern here, I repeat again, is organizational behavior helps us to understand, to be able to predict, to be able to plan what is likely to result from human behavior and human relationships. You notice the second author there defines organizational behavior as the study of human behavior within organizational settings. It's the study of how human behavior interfaces within the organizational context. Again here with a focus on achieving the targets, the goals of that organization. Now, during your study time, when you find time, if you click on that ResearchGate link, it will lead you to that article that will help you to gain a deeper understanding of the concept of organizational behavior. So if you are able to click on that link, it will lead you to that article that can help you to understand it better. So organizational behavior as an art, as a science, is concerned with the knowledge about how people act within organizations. Therefore, it focuses on individuals within the organization, on groups within the organization, on that organization itself, and the interaction between that organization with the groups within the organization, with the individuals within the organization. What we mean here is that think about a school as the organization. So we're talking about the individuals within that organization. You see, you could be a teacher within that organization. You may want to look at things in terms of the classroom you teach, the subject you teach, your learners. Think about how the principal looks at that school as an organization when every morning begins, when evening comes. You could be somebody working in a bank, working in an NGO. When morning begins, when evening comes, what do you think about when you are thinking about your organization? You think about the individuals within that organization, be it the learners, the workers in the school, the teachers in the school, if you are a principal, be it the cooks, be it the sweepers within that bank. So you think about the individuals. Second, you think about the groups. If you are a principal, you are thinking about learners when they go to the dining hall and they meet the food. Learners as a group, how are they likely to behave? If you are a class teacher in a mixed school, in a mixed classroom, the various groups, be it girls and boys, the groups that exist in a school, you are thinking about the workers, you are thinking about the teachers, the learners. If you work in a bank, you are thinking about your clients. If you are a principal, you are thinking about the parents. So you see, organizational behavior is about the individuals within that organization. It's about the groups within that organization. It is about that organization itself. Now, as a teacher, as a principal, you are thinking about now the school. You ask yourself, what is the image of the school to the public? You ask yourself, what about the results? You see, you ask yourself, if teachers behave this way, what does the public think about that school? Like you see, dear students and colleagues, you see, sometimes I'm disturbed when I walk along the streets, and I don't know the teachers in the house if you've seen this. When our learners are within the school compound, they tuck in their shirts. I want to talk about small things that make a difference. They tuck in their shirts. There could be rules within that school. Be it girls, boys, tuck in their blouse, tuck in their shirts. Do you notice the moment they step out of the school, maybe for the scholars, they just step outside the gate, you notice they untuck their shirt, they untuck their blouse, they unbutton their blouse, they unbutton their shirts. Now, if you meet a teacher, if you meet a principal of that school and you want to talk about this, and somebody responds, no, they did that outside the school. I meet a learner who maybe is behaving in a particular way on the streets. What courage do I have to go and share with a teacher, with say the principal? These things, we see them. I want to cite some school. There is a school in Bungoma town in this country. I think it's called Namachanja. It's a day school. These are personal observations. I'm always amazed with these students. It's a mixed school, both boys and girls. A secondary school performs relatively well, even in exams.
Just to confirm, that is a very serious performing school.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now, what I want to share about this school is a day school within town, a mixed day school within town. When these girls move out of school in the evening, they are going home. You notice the girls, the boys, with the tucked-in blouses, with the tucked-in shirts, nice blazers, well done, combed hair. You don't find them standing in the streets. When you see them moving, it's as if they have been sent home. It could be 5, 6, but you'd think they have been sent home by the teachers to bring something, focused on getting home. And then, Chris, as you observe, and then the academic performance only becomes an offshoot of this kind of observance that we see. So we're talking about the behavior of those individuals within an organization and how that behavior, impacts on the organization. That when those people act, you see, the world outside there see the organization. When we see those students, we see that school, we see that organization. That's what we are talking about in bullet number 3, that we are not only talking about individuals, we're not only talking about the groups, but we're also talking about the organization itself. And the organization voices when the individuals or a group act in a manner to reveal the image of the organization. Then think about the interaction between individuals, between the groups, with the organization, within that organization. You see, I'm choosing those words very carefully. I repeat that again. Think about the interactions between the individuals, between the groups, within that organization, and how they relate together. All these concerns is what the science of organizational behavior is concerned with. When we look at all these things, we are attempting to understand what the science, what the art of organizational behavior is concerned with. That is why we are saying the ultimate subject matter of organizational behavior as a field of study is about 2 things. Is about individual behavior, which touches both on the intrapersonal behavior and the interpersonal behavior. And secondly, the group behavior within the organization. So when we're talking about the individual behavior, intrapersonal behavior, we are talking about the attitudes within those individuals. If, for example, you are a principal in a school, when you want to evaluate, when you want to think about individual behavior as a subject of organizational behavior, then you want to think first and foremost about the intrapersonal behavior. That is the behavior within the individual. You are talking about the attitudes that your teachers have, the teachers within that school, the workers within that bank, the attitudes that they have. You are thinking about, you see, attitude, those are intrinsic things, the intrapersonal behavior. You are talking about things that are intrinsic to the individuals. That's why we've talked about whether what the workers go through outside the organization have anything to do with the organization. The attitudes they have, the perception they have, and so forth. How does this affect the individual behavior? And then the interpersonal behavior, that is the relationship between individuals within the organization. How do cooks relate with the students? How do teachers relate with the learners? How do learners relate with the workers? And so forth and so forth. And then think about the group behavior. Within the groups, some of the things we find in schools, you get strikes, you get whatever it is, and so forth. Could we understand this again, the dynamics of group behavior? So the subject matter of organizational behavior is about the individual behavior within an organization and also the group behavior within those organizations. This should be able to bring us, that kind of discussion should be able to bring us to discussing the scope of organizational behavior, which is really an emphasis on what we've just looked at. You know, the scope of organizational behavior can be summed up into three things. That is the individuals within the organization, talk about the leadership, the personality of these individuals, what motivates them, their motivations. You have within that organization people. You talk about promotions within that organization. You want to use promotions to motivate your workers, but workers want to understand the promotion as a way of getting more money, not as being motivated to work better. No. You see? Talk about the perception, the leadership within that. So these are things that touch on individuals within an organization. And then think about the group dynamics within the organization. You know, the group dynamics within the organization, teamwork, how groups work within the organization, how they pull together, and so forth. You know, these are all elements that put a stamp on organizational behavior. And then think about now the overall, as when I used that example of that Namashanja Secondary School in Bungoma. Think about what the behaviors of this individual, what the action, the behaviors of this group, how they coalesce together to define what you would call organizational structure. Now, when you're talking about organizational structure, you are trying to ask yourself, talk about the bureaucracies within an organization. You know that if you wanted to be absent from work, you would talk to so and so, who would talk to so and so, who would later talk to so and so. So this organizational structure, the individuals, the groups, how do these things, how do these factors relate together so as to see to it that the overall organizational objective is achieved? You know, that is of greater concern to organizational behavior. When you talk about organizational behavior, these are the things we'll be talking about. So having said that, now I invite you for an interactive discussion that should make us delve deep into the nature of organizational behavior. You see, as we talk about the nature of organizational behavior, we want to see this science, how does it manifest itself? What is it? You know, what is it? How does it manifest itself? So we have about 6 elements here to look at, and I will summon various members of class to comment on this. The first one is that organizational behavior is not just an emotional feeling. It's not just an, you know, a team leader, an organizational leader rising up and, you know, saying, if you don't do this, I'll sack you. If you don't do this, I'll not recommend your promotion. Rather, organizational behavior is a rational thinking about people. Organizational behavior is a rational thinking about people. Who can explain to us what he or she understands with this concept, organizational behavior, as a rational thinking about people? Anybody would like to respond to that? Maybe Francis. Francis, I can see Francis or Chami. You are here? Francis, would you say something? What do you understand by the concept, organizational behavior as a rational thinking about people, not an emotional feeling? Ochami?
Thank you, Dr. and good evening.
Good evening to you.
Yeah, so for me, I look at organizational behaviors as from where I work, for example, the corporate philosophies that that would guide the organization, something like the mission, the vision, and the core values. For example, at Equity Bank, one of our vision is to be the leading financial institution within the East and Central Africa region. The purpose that drives the organization is to transform lives of the people of Africa. And that's why you see the banks growing within the region, acquiring other banks, just so that we are able to have a strong foothold within the region. And so if I look at this specific rational thinking about people, it then means that the organization, in my case, for example, needs to look at how the people that work for it, the people that work with the bank, work together as a team, for example, because at the end of the day, you cannot work and achieve anything in isolation. You cannot work alone. You have to work as a team. And therefore, as part of the corporate philosophies, one of the core values that drives our action is teamwork. The other one is around respect, mutual respect for both colleagues and also the customers, because without customers, then we will not have something to do. We will not earn our bread. And so we have to have that mutual respect. So, Daktari, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, good, good, very well. So rational thinking about people. Osanya.
Thank you, Daktari. Rational thinking about people and organization, to me, I understand as a leader, I need always to be in the shoes of the workers. Once that happens, I become more understanding. I should come low to the people. I should feel what they are doing before I make any judgment or any decision. That's my take.
Very well, Osanya. Chris, you'd like to put some weight on this?
Yes. Daktari, I would relate rational thinking to rational theory, where an individual or groups of individuals in management level make decisions after weighing the advantages and disadvantages of that particular decision, that when the decision will then bring more advantages to the organization, they will go ahead and take an action. But when it doesn't, then they will have to avoid it from the rational theory. Now, putting an example, for example, a leader who, for example, a principal or management level who wants to sack a particular individual, and they know very well that the contributions that a particular employee has brought to the organization or is likely to bring to the organization are more than the, for example, the mistake that this person has done. Then using the rational thinking, they will result into not sacking such a particular individual. And therefore, the rational thinking will supersede the emotional feeling and the action that they would have taken that would then jeopardize the organization.
Right. So we hear you. So when we talk about rational thinking, organizational behavior being a rational thinking about people. Rational to mean we think about people reasonably. We think about organizations reasonably. We give proposals that are reasonable. that are achievable, rational thinking about people. You know, as you'll be seeing as the weeks turn around in the course, we'll be emphasizing that people are the greatest resource. I remember Madiam earlier on indicated that we need to reflect about the issues that surround things like artificial intelligence, the involvement of machines, robots in organizations, and so forth. But you see, people are the ultimate resource. So when you are thinking about people in organizational behavior as a science, you think about them reasonably. We are saying, secondly, that organizational behavior is, if you like, a practical science, is an applied science, is not theoretical. You see, that means organizational behavior seeks to balance, you know, human and the technical values at work. You know, there is always something special about the human element at the workplace. There is something always special about, you know, the humanistic attitudes at the workplace. There is something unique about the human involvement in the workplace more than the artificial machine involvement in the workplace. So organizational behavior is a practical science, is an applied science. Who could help us put some flesh on that, some understanding on that? Organizational behavior is an applied science, is a practical science. Helen, would you like to weigh in on this? Helen?
Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Initially, I had raised up my hand and I wanted to contribute to support what my classmates have mentioned, because when you're looking at organization behavior being so practical or an applied science, we are talking about things being so pragmatic. We are doing things with reason. We are doing what we do because there's something that has triggered that decision to be made. When most of the leaders are making the decisions, they have reasoning behind what they're doing, as opposed to emotional feelings. And that is what we call applying what we are observing or what we are doing, or having some reason for what is being done or what decision is being made in the organization. Thank you.
Very well. So, Helen, you've added in your weight on looking at organizational behavior, understanding the nature of organizational behavior as a rational undertaking, as a rational thinking about people. We consider the third definition of the nature of organizational behavior, and we tell ourselves that organizational behavior, I've used this concept severally, is both an art as well as a science. You know, organizational behavior is at once empirical, interpretive, and critical. Why do you think organizational behavior is an art? Why do you think organizational behavior is a science? What is the distinction? What is the difference between an art and a science? Would we have some reactions to that, please? Anybody? Any hand? If I go over that again, we are looking at our third installment on understanding the nature of organizational behavior. We're saying organizational behavior is both an art as well as a science. You know, is at once empirical, it is interpretive, it is critical. Why do we say organizational behavior is an art? Why do we say organizational behavior is a science? What is the distinction between an art and a science. I see Caroline's, not Caroline, I see Madiang's hand up. No, did I see Carol's hand up? I think I missed that. All right. Carol, would you like to say something?
Still thinking about it.
Very well. So just think about it. Ngosi, Ruth Ngosi, I can see your hand up.
Doc, I just want to try and differentiate between the two. And I can say that art expresses maybe knowledge, my knowledge. In this, it's subjective, and then science is the system of acquiring that knowledge. I'm not sure, so it is objective. Thank you.
Very well, Ngosi. Let's get some Wayne. Hey, people, you are very quiet, people in the house. I want to hear you. Nzuki, I would like to hear you. Why do we say organizational behavior is both an art as well as a science? What is the difference between an art and a science? Nzuki.
So maybe, Daktari, I can talk about the creativity about an art, while a science is a practical thing. So when we come to organizations, I think there's that hard part, how people can create things there, and also about the environment, the behavior and all that. And then the practical part, I don't know whether I can say that after maybe there's something that needs to be tested, and then it can be a science in that manner. Thank you, Daktari.
Very well for that rejoinder, Nzuki. Let's have quite a little bit more. Festus? Why do we say that organizational behavior is both art as well as a science? Festus? Festus seems not to be with us here. All right. You see, when we talk about an art, when we talk about a science, and I think it must be Faith that Faith Nzuki who moved very close to that. You see, an art creates, an artist creates. So when you talk about organizational behavior as an art, it is this discipline that moves out creatively, innovatively to discover what are the new dynamics, the new ways, the new approaches through which organizations can flourish and strengthen themselves. When you talk about a science follows rules. Science is about rules, it's about principles. Therefore, organizational behavior gives us an impression of the structures, the principles against which organizational success needs to be molded, needs to be built upon. So when we are saying that organizational behavior is at once empirical, it means it is something practical. It is something that happens in real life. It is interpretive. You see, organizational behavior as a discipline can interpret that when you see such and such a thing happening in an organization, there is likely to be this and this within that organization. So you see, organizational behavior is interpretive. Organizational behavior is critical. That is on the line of organizational behavior as an art. Organizational behavior is critical. It delves into coming up with solutions to organizational success, to organizational leadership, to organizational, functioning. That's when we're talking about, you see, organization and organizational behavior being both an art as well as a science. We look at the fourth installment where we're saying that when you look at the nature of organizational behavior, at once it is normative. and it is value-centered. In other words, we are saying it is concerned with the ought, what ought to be done, what ought to be followed. You see, what ought to be done, what ought to be followed. Therefore, when talking about organizational behavior as a discipline, as a field of study, it is normative, norms. It sets forth norms that if you want an organization to succeed, these are the norms to be followed. These are the issues to be adhered to. But as you follow those norms, it is also value-centered. Remember, we have said organizational behavior is people-centered. Therefore, it is value-centered. You must also value people. As you follow the rules, the norms, the set standards, organizational behavior is about, how do we look at people within the organization? Of course, this leads us to the fifth undertaking, whereby we say organizational behavior is humanistic and optimistic. Of course, humanistic meaning that it is person-centered, human-centered. You know, what Madiang said earlier, I'm referring to this, something he brought up. You know, when you are thinking about the success of an organization, you don't think about how you will replace that person within the organization with a machine, how you will replace that person within the organization with artificial intelligence. But you think about what can that person do for the organization that the machine cannot do, that artificial intelligence cannot do. Therefore, organizational behavior as a discipline is humanistic, is optimistic. Optimistic is positive. So that's why I put it that it is realistic, it is human-centered. Finally, organizational behavior as a discipline is an interdisciplinary approach to understanding the functioning of organizations. It's really humanistic, interdisciplinary approach towards the functioning of organization. That's why we talk about the sciences involved. You see, when you talk about interdisciplinary approach, organizational behavior uses psychology, uses sociology, uses social psychology, uses anthropology, uses political science, uses philosophy, uses all other manner of disciplines, uses religion. You see, when you want to understand how do these individuals behave within this organization, why is it that when I reach lunchtime within this organization, people have been working? Why is it that people within that office, they normally lock the doors for 5 minutes, perhaps after 2? And I don't know what normally happens, but when clients come from 2 to 2:10, the clients find the doors of that room shut. Why? You are about to think you need to sack the workers who work in that particular office or room, just to discover those workers normally kneel to pray. They are normally engrossed in prayer. Now, you want to move in as the leader within the organization and say, no, you are wasting the first 10 minutes of the organization. Instead of attending to those clients, you are praying, you are closing the doors and praying. So you come up with a rule. There'll be no that prayer. You must attend to clients. Now, look at the output of those workers just because you denied them a chance to do that. You see, you are now understanding. You use all this, psychology, sociology, religion, anthropology, to try and understand how individual behavior, group behavior, and organizational interaction happens within the organization. So you can now see all these 6 elements help us to define the nature of organizational behavior. Organizational behavior is at once rational, is applied, it is both an art and a science. Organizational behavior is based on set norms and standards. It is value-based. Organizational behavior is humanistic in nature. It's concerned about people. It is people-centered. not machine-centered, not AI-centered, it's people-centered. And finally, the nature of organizational behavior is that it is interdisciplinary, using different types of knowledge to understand really individual interactions and behaviors within the organization. After this, would like to look at, would like to make some leap and look, ask ourselves, so what is the importance of organizational behavior? Why should we have a concern for organizational behavior? Those of us who could be having whatever small leadership portfolio within the organizations we are in, we could only be mere classroom, whatever teachers, we could be class teachers for given classes, we could be heads of departments, we could be heads of sections within bigger institutions. Why should we be concerned about organizational behavior? What is its importance? What is the importance of organizational behavior? You notice organizational behavior helps us to explain what we've called interpersonal relationships. Interpersonal relationship affects the output of an organization. If people within the organization do not have healthy interpersonal relationship, if people within a department come in and say, no, I was employed here, it doesn't matter whether I agree or I don't agree with my head of department. And maybe the head of department says, all right, we'll follow the rules. It doesn't matter what these members want or whatever, we'll follow the rules. Look at the output. Second, organizational behavior helps us to explain about the prediction of behavior of individuals. We need to be able to know, remember those days we are in primary school and we've made this idea that when teacher so-and-so comes to school, putting on the blue shirt or the white shirt, there'll be peace. Classroom will be enjoyable. If he's a master on duty, he'll be very good. He'll be very welcoming and so forth. He'll be good to talk to. But when the same teacher comes in putting on a black shirt or a red shirt, don't come before him. He'll be very bitter. He'll be caning everybody who crosses his line and so forth. That is not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about, but that helps us to understand a remote idea about predicting behavior. Organizational behavior as a discipline is important in the sense that it will help us to be able to see when people behave this way, perhaps when people in an organization are given time, perhaps to pray, what Macho was talking about. If mothers in a company, if mothers in an organization are given intervals to go and breastfeed, and the room is prepared for mothers to breastfeed their children at an interval of, say, 1 hour or 2 hours, an organization has been able to discover that once mothers have breastfed their children at those intervals, they rise up from that room and become very productive in the organization. Organizational behavior is important because it helps us to understand and predict individual behavior. See, organizational behavior is also critical and very important because it can also help us, both as an organization, as a country, to map up new economic policies. You can map up new economic policies on the basis of understanding how people behave. How people behave. The political climate in our country sometimes is not very favorable to making certain examples, illustration, but let's try. You see, there is a conversation in the country now, and every group that converses about this, if you look at Kenya as an organization, every group that converses on these issues looks at the issues differently. There is this issue about, building of houses, building of houses. On one side, there is the worker, the middle class, that feels that I'm being taxed too much. My income is being invaded. On the other hand, the political class is saying that, you see, we promised people that we will build houses, and this is the only way we can build the houses. There is the so-called hustler that is being told that these people, the middle class, who are complaining about their money, their pockets being invaded, they are refusing to give you a chance to go and get a job, to go and construct those, because if they are not taxed, will not get money to pay you. So they are against you getting a job. Organizational behavior. We must be able to understand the behavior of the middle class as a group of people, the behavior of the lower class, the so-called hustler, as a group of people, the behavior of the political class as a group of people. Once we understand their behavior, this will help us to be able to map out new economic strategies and new economic policies for the organization, for the country. Fourthly, when you're talking about the importance of organizational behavior, we now focus on the leader, the team leader, the organizational leader. And an understanding of organizational behavior as a discipline will be of great importance to the leader, to the manager, to help him map out how he can be able to motivate his subordinate. By relating how this subordinate behave, how they act towards incentives, motivation, a manager can be able to know how really he can be able to relate and be able to develop the organization by motivating really his inferiors, or rather his subordinates. So you notice these four elements plus many others that you may want to come across in your readings map to us the importance of organizational behavior, the importance of organizational behavior. Very important. Now, moving on, would like to make a discussion on now what we'd call the main features of organizational behavior. We are recapping this. These are things we may already have said in some of the slides. The main features, the main elements of organizational behavior. And a few things that we've said before will come really to mirror themselves here. Four main features, four main elements. When you are talking about organizational behavior, the first and most important feature is people. 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 People are irreplaceable in an organization. People. Second, the second main feature of an organization is the structure, the relationships within that organization, the structure. Talking about the hierarchy, the command, the chain of command within the organization, the structure. That's what we define as the structure of the organization. Only after that, we come to the third main element, main feature of organizational behavior, technology. So when you talk about technology, you want to talk about the machines that you use in that organization, the work processes. Even if it was in a school setting, a school as an organization, we're talking about the resources, the things that the teachers will use to achieve the set objectives. I'm thinking about, was it today or yesterday when we are faced with this reality? I think yesterday when parents stormed the school in one of the schools in Western Kenya, and from March, the DOS, the Director of Studies, for having gotten poor results in the school. And really, the community harassed a few of the teachers there. And I think Kupet complained about this. And I don't want to make a judgment on what has happened morally, but we are looking at it as a feature of organizational behavior. So TSC has moved in and has transferred, I think, 7 or so, more than 5 teachers from that school, and has not replaced them. The word is, let the community identify good teachers. See? Now, what I want to relate that in the light of people and the technology. You are in an organization. People are the most important resource. But even when you talk about people, you must enable those people. We are talking about technology. If it's in a school, we're talking about books, pieces of chalks, classrooms, whatever it is. So the technology that is available, you're talking about teachers going to class. Are they able to make the teaching aids as part of the resources that they will use? So technology is a very important feature of organizational behavior. And then finally, you talk about the environment that that organization operates in. So, you are thinking about, when you talk about people, when you talk about structure, when you talk about technology, you want to talk about the external environment, whether this external environment be political, the social environment, how people behave, how government behaves, and so forth. You're talking about that, the external environment that the organization finds itself in. All this affect the output of an organization. So these 4 elements are the ones we define as the main features, the elements that determine what we refer to as organizational behavior, the success within the organization. My 9th slide is, yes, please.
Just a quick question. So where do we place the culture of an organization? Is it not part of the elements?
Yes, culture. Yeah, and I think when we talk about culture, we're talking about how people and the structure. I think it's a combination of people and the structure. So that when you're talking about culture, like I'm thinking about a school, you get to that school, and as a student, as a new student, as a new teacher, there is a way of doing things. You get to this Namachanja High School as a new student, and when you are going home, there is a way that the students behave. I would attribute that closely to what is produced between an interplay of people and the structure. What do you think? Discuss this more, kindly. Could you develop that discussion a little bit more? Macho?
Thank you, Mwalimu. I think culture is basically people. For those who are in the human resource field, people say when we talk about human resource, we talk about people and culture. So it's almost synonymous. People are almost synonymous to culture. If you look at the example you've just given us of this community or from this particular school, probably these are norms or culture that has been created by the people, that if a school does not do well, you go punish the teacher. And so for me, the structure only comes in when you create it. The people themselves created the structure. But when we talk about culture, it is actually the people. That's my view. Thank you.
Very well. Very well, Macho. Now, I'm just thinking a little bit more on what Macho you raised. And just reflect with me. I want to pick up that example I've given because we are trying to understand what has been raised by one of us, institutional culture. And when Florence has responded to that, linking it to the examples I'd given, he has alluded to there could be a culture within a given community. Now, it is true, and I want to pose a question here. Why is it that when learners go to a school, they are taught, be it for the 4 years, be it for the 8 years, and some of them come out, they fail exams? You know, every Dick, Tom, and Harry picks a twig, picks kiboko, picks stones, and wants to beat up teachers, want to beat up the head teacher, they frog march them, and so forth. And on the other hand, why is it that when we take our patients to hospital, and in those hospitals, doctors work, the patients are admitted for be it a week, a month, or whatever it is, doctors work, and at the end of it, a few patients get well, they go home, quite a number die, but the villagers and the community does not take twigs to punish the medical doctors, the medical staff. Indeed, I told you in the last semester's class, some of us have ended up thanking the medical staff for the effort they have done, though our loved ones have died. What can you say about this, about institutional culture, rather our culture as a society? Anybody? Anybody? Yes, Josephine. I saw your hand up, Josephine. Is it Josephine? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think the institutional cultures come from the norms that we build.
Yes.
That we are used to doing.
Yes. Yes.
For example, the Isongo school, the principal is being blamed for the poor performance. But when we look at the community that is rising against the teacher, the principal, the community has had something to contribute. Then I looked at the results. The results, out of 179 candidates, 175 got a D minus. Is that logical? So when we look at there are things that contributed to it, but because of the norm that we create of blaming the principal, the school, the teachers, we tend to crucify the teacher at the expense of this candidate who sat for the exam, or the NEC who gave unlogical facts. So that is according to me. Number two, there's this incident that happened in Goma, where a lady shouted at nurses, doctors, wanting the friend to be treated. Action was taken very fast, and I think the lady was arrested. So when you look at the norms that are created at the hospital level, they are not the same that are created at school. When parents, PTA, the board comes, the first thing they always ask, what happened to the results? They are ready to crucify the teacher. What happened? the child, the candidate is not asked. When somebody dies at the hospital, as you have said, you will not go to the doctor and start criticizing the doctor what happened, or maybe from negligence and what have you. That one comes afterwards. So I think we've created that norm of criticizing the teacher. So it is the norms that we have, and that is the culture that we have built. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Josephine, for those words. So you see, we are trying to underscore the fact that within an organization, this organization could be a school, could be a hospital. You need to understand the behavior, the reactions of the people. How are individuals likely to behave? How are individuals likely to act, and so forth? So that as we think about the organizational leadership, we need to have at the back of our mind, how are people likely to behave and act, and so forth. So once more again, to summarize the slide before us, we are saying there are 4 major features, major elements of organizational behavior. Even as some of our colleagues have put it, that even when you want to understand what we call institutional culture, it is about how people interact, how people act. A new learner joins this school, in this classroom, and he discovers in this new school a class culture. This is how we welcome visitors to our class. These are the structures. Do we stand up when we are receiving visitors? What are the words we use, and so forth? So these 4 things, the people, and I've emphasized people, are as such irreplaceable within organizations. So people, be they as individuals or be they as groups. You see, structure. With the structure, I've cited the idea of, say, the chain of command, the flow of command within an organization, the relationship within an organization, order within an organization, the structures within that organization. So, we're trying to say, if you go to an organization, you are supposed to be a bank manager in that branch, and you are told there are these problems there. Or as a principal within a school, you are told there are these problems there. The first things to attend to, people within that organization, the structure within that organization, and then be able to look at what are the resources available for these people to work with, what are the resources available, and then talk about the environment around us. And you can stretch this kind of thinking across organization. You want to talk about the judiciary in Kenya? Talk about the people who work in the judiciary, the structure of the judiciary, who gives the command to who, the technology, that is the resources, the budgets within the judiciary, the environment, be it the social, the political environment around the judiciary. So when you look at these 4 things, you are helped to understand the extent to which an organization will succeed or will fail. So I think that now makes us make that leap for our next slide, which really is a big leap to be able to consider what we call the contrasting perspectives and orientations within the workplace, what some people will refer to as the work ethics. And here I just summarize in a word that the concern, when we are talking about the contrasting perspectives, the differing perspectives, the varying perspectives as concerns our orientation to work and work ethics. The concern here is simply how work and attention to work is viewed in different perspectives and situations. So I've made a guidance that regarding this particular thinking this particular slide, if you click on the link that is before us, you should be able to read more about this. What I mean by this, just to say a few words, when you are thinking about work orientations, you know, think about it this way, dear friends. There are people among us who, for example, maybe put it this way, when you are making your hierarchy, you know, I'm addressing you as an individual. I'm addressing myself as an individual, as a worker in that organization. Whether you are a manager, I'm addressing you now as a worker within that organization, as a manager doing the work of management. Whether you are a team leader, I'm addressing you as a worker doing the work of team leadership. Whether you are a classroom teacher, I address you in that respect. So I pose the question when we are talking about work and work ethic. I pose the question, were you to make a hierarchy of ordering, say, pick something like family, your faith, your boss, your work, continue the list. How would you draw the hierarchy of your attention? How would you draw your hierarchy of attention? This question that I've posed summarizes this slide. What are the varying perspectives on orientations to work and work ethics? When we think about work in that kind of scenario I've given, how would you draw your hierarchy? Perhaps before we move, can we have some rejoinders on that? Let's have some rejoinders on that. Were you to draw some hierarchy concerning this, how would you look at it? How would you draw your hierarchy? Anybody? We are trying to understand contrasting, differing perspectives about the concept of work and work ethics. Maybe let's take four elements. Think about family, work, faith, and perhaps what? Perhaps relatives. Those four. How would you draw your hierarchy between those things? Anybody?
Please repeat the items: family, work, faith, and?
Yeah, if I put before you family, I put before you faith, your religion as it were. I put before you work. Maybe let's see, what else would we put? Help me tabulate, tabulate it. Family, faith, work. Can we add there your boss? Because we want to distinguish work. You know, work is the actual doing, and the boss, you know, the one who is commanding you perhaps to do, the one who is leading you. So when you looked at this, let's take these four. If you would like to add the fifth one, is as good. Family, faith,
okay,
work,
let me.
boss. Yes?
Family comes first.
So you would put family first.
Faith 2.
Faith 2.
3 work.
3 work.
And 4 boss.
4 boss. What would be your explanations, Chris?
Of course, family in any setup should come first, because when work is not there, you will run to your family. They will always be there.
So you put family first. Yes, I hear you.
Number 2, faith. Your understanding your faith will always help the family to grow. Understanding the faith and growing in your faith will always keep the family together. Number 3, work will facilitate the family, and work will facilitate your faith to be able to be put together. Work will be able to help the family to grow both mentally, physically, and health-wise. Now, boss comes last, because if you don't work well, taking instructions from the boss, then the work will not be in existence. And therefore, work comes first and then the boss. Now, why somebody will argue that the boss should become number 3 and then work first. But then you ask yourself, if you are not performing at workplace, then the boss will not be able to recognize you. And therefore, work should always be the first thing to make sure that you are doing to your best level, and then the boss last. Thank you. That's my defense.
Chris, that's very well. So your hierarchy is number 1, family, faith, work, and then boss. Anybody else? Anybody else?
But then, Dr. Harry, I need to also put this disclaimer.
Yes.
This hierarchy also depends on the institution. And number 2, with the current, of course, things happening, it also depends with the gender of that particular individual. And 3, it is also dependent on one's integrity and professionalism, because then someone will put their boss and then work, of course, depending on gender, integrity, and professionalism. So that one is debatable. Thank you.
All right. So the idea is boss here. So we put it that you're trying to say, which is right, that also where you are putting boss will also depend on the integrity of the boss also, no?
Integrity of both.
Integrity
both
of both.
the employee and the employee, integrity of both the worker and boss.
Very good, very well.
Yes, if somebody can be compromised so easily, then that person will always bring the boss first. Thank you.
Right. We get another. Maureen? I lost Maureen. I saw the hand up and then I quickly. Okay. Yes, Maureen, I can your microphone on.
Okay, for me, I'll say faith first, then family, then work, then the boss. So reason being, faith first is because for me, my faith is everything. And without, basically faith, I mean God. Without God, I am nothing. So if I don't have God, my family and my work cannot go well. So if I have faith, I always believe that all other things will work out well. Then why I put work before the boss is, I'll say work is, I don't know how I'll put it, but I think I respect more what I am doing because I need to be passionate about what I am doing so that I can be able to also love those who are leading, or I'm those who are above me. Yes, that's my
right. So your hierarchy takes the shape of God, family, work, boss. Sarah, how would you put it? Yes, Sarah.
Daktari, values and circumstances have the order.
Pardon?
Yes, it will depend on the values. Yes. Hello, are you getting me?
I'm getting you.
For my case, it will depend on values and the circumstances. So what I'll prioritize first. So it could be family. Times it will vary. It will depend with the circumstance.
So you're taking us, of course, to an earlier slide, environment. No, environment will be speaking to you. Huh?
Yes.
So get an environment and try to show us how environment will indeed define the varying, or rather if you will determine the contrasting perspectives on the orientations you'll have to work and work ethics. Yes? We seem to have lost her. Let me get a reaction from Helen. Helen?
Yes, for me, Doctor, I'm going to support Maureen to some extent because
Yes.
in everything we do, regardless of the circumstances, we should put God first in everything because we need wisdom and guidance in doing everything. Secondly, God created the family. So we have the family that is going to dictate why you're working so that you can be able to know the movements and how you're going to go about your job, to have that passion so that at least as you do your work with passion, then your bosses will always be happy in what you do, or maybe will always be in a position to support. That will be my take.
Very well. So in a nutshell, we are saying that when you talk about the contrasting perspectives and orientations to work and work ethics, is about that. And, we're talking, when you read the article that I've highlighted the link before you, and you can be able to get this because I've posted these slides within the WhatsApp platform. When you look at it, you'll see, for example, people who would even put work first. Now we're talking about the people defined as workaholics. Those will put work first. Whose hierarchy would be perhaps work, and then perhaps family, or maybe work, boss. In fact, the hierarchy would be something closer to work, boss, then family, then God or religion, something of that kind. So what I want to summon all of us to is this. If you picked these 4 elements, you see, I've just come up with these elements to discuss. If you picked these 4 elements and even added on a little bit more elements, you would even add on maybe spouse, you would add on maybe the organization, you'd make the organization to be part of it. You'd even add on the group you belong to. You can put on various elements and then try to do your own hierarchy of how you'd respond to these things. Try to do your own hierarchy. And the hierarchy you are able to come up, try to reason over it so that the hierarchy you are coming up with, it is not just an emotive one, born out of feelings, born out of how you'd like people to view you. But try to consider that is it true that when push comes to push in your own individual life, you'd actually put religion first before your work? And ask yourself, how many of us would be able to put religion first before work? When the boss commands that this must be done by this time, don't leave the office unless this is done. Or when the boss commands that we need all of us to come to the workplace on Sunday, like I was reading in your assignments. I know one of you was telling a story of how a global leader was visiting the country and they were supposed to listen to him. And this was on a Sunday. And the article that one of you wrote was bordering on, this confused me in the light of my faith. but all the same are here to go. Those are the kind of things we are thinking about. So the question we are putting there as you read this particular article before us is, how do these elements, how do such hierarchies, how do such perspectives and orientations determine our thinking about work and work ethics? You'd even add in this hierarchy profits, you are, so that there is the element of work and the element of personalized benefit. So that how would you place in the hierarchy your benefit, be it a monthly salary and a work? For example, how would you make a hierarchy in the context of end month has come, the government has no salary for you, and you are a medical staff, and the patients are in hospital? Do you work because you fear being sacked, so that actually, although you are going to work, although you are giving in your workers, your hours, it is not because it is work that you are giving premium, but is actually the self. You are worried about the possibility of being sacked if you don't go on duty. So where do you place personal interest? So you can see, dear students, those struggles are making thinking through these things out, just to explain perspectives on orientations towards work, because the way we think about these elements define how we work, define how we put in work. In fact, if you are to look at these elements, you'll come to understand, people have asked, why is it that people with bigger incomes or bigger personal resources tend to ask for earlier retirement, whereas people with the meager resources are the ones actually who tend to ask even for contracts when the time for retirement comes? So you see, this is what we mean by contrasting perspectives and orientations towards work and work ethics. So read on to that and you can be able to discover quite a lot of things as concerned that. Towards the end, and then, after having those issues that I've raised in that article, towards the end, then let us consider what we refer to as what we have called the psychological contract theory in organizational behavior. So in the previous slide, we have seen how people react towards work. We discussed how people develop various orientations towards work. And one of the issues that we brought up is that, you see, people develop particular work ethics based on the personalized interests, what they stand to benefit from that work. So you see somebody put in his best energy, his best hours, but is doing it not because of what the organization should achieve. And for us teachers, with due respect, I put this question before you. We are parents and occasionally we are asked 1,000 for the so-called tuition, for extra teaching, weekend teaching, Friday teaching, whatever, holiday teaching, and so forth. Now, you as a teacher, as you go to that school, do you do it because of the interest of the mean score, the interest of that individual learner, or the interest of what you are likely to get from that workplace? So we are gathered there, as I indicate in the slide before us. We are gathered in that organization, various people doing various things, people with various orientations. So one of the issues that will actually affect the output is this element we are calling the psychological contract theory, its effect in organizational behavior. What is the concept of a psychological contract theory? This is simply to say that in any given organization, there are normally what we call unwritten laws, unwritten promises, unwritten traditions. These unwritten traditions, unwritten promises that are given to employees as incentives. So the psychological contract theory would hold that if this organization will satisfy these unwritten promises, employees will easily recognize that the employer is interested in developing positive social exchange relationship and will in turn, contribute actively towards the organization. That is really the essence of what we call the psychological contract theory. In other words, you see, although it's unwritten, but there is a way an employee is expecting something because you as the organizational leader, or rather the tradition of the organization has promised that if you produce an A in your subject, if it is a science subject, we will reward you 1,000 shillings. If it is an art humanity subject, we'll reward you 500 shillings. So as you work and the results have come up, that's what you expect. So that within that organization, call it a school, call it a bank. In a bank, for example, you've asked your employees that go out and popularize this particular product of the bank, this particular account type. And for every client that you win that opens this account, you'll get this incentive. So the worker comes back. So as the team leader, as the organizational leader, the psychological contract theory, looks at it that you'll not wait for the employees to ask, because in any case, they may not ask because this is not a written demand. But when you voluntarily satisfy those promises, you communicate to your employees that you are recognizing what they are doing, that you are interested in what they are doing, and that you are willing to develop a positive social exchange relationship between you yourself as the boss and the employees who work below you or under you. So I'm putting it again that the core element in this theory is that, there is the understanding that there are beliefs, there are individual beliefs within the organization that actually bind the employer, bind the bosses within the organization and the subordinates. That this kind of relationship that are often unwritten, but when they are looked into, when they are obeyed, they actually, push the employer to give in his best. So once more again, I've given you a reading, which again you can download on the basis of what is in the WhatsApp, and you can be able to look at it and be able to see how this can be able to help within the organization. Finally, as we come to the end of this class, finally, as an introductory kind of lecture within this course, we need to look at now how the organizational behavior will operate. You see, in terms of, the incentives you give within the organization, and in terms of the tasks you give within the organization. There are two important principles that help us to understand this. What we call the Peter principle, simply named after the person who came up with it, and what we call the Parkinson law. Now, in the general terms, the Peter principle explains how employees are promoted within an organization. I'll make this very brief. What the Peter principle simply says, employees within an organization are actually promoted to the level of their incompetence. You know, this is really something that is the opposite of what we think. Peter says promotions within an organization really involve raising people to their level of their incompetence. What this means, an employee who is competent in a given field will be promoted, and promotion means rising up the ladder, being given newer responsibilities. And you see, there will always be newer, there will always be a demand for extra responsibility within the organization. So we will tend to promote employees. But because there is always a need to promote, there is always a need, not really to promote, there is always a need to fill somebody within certain responsibility. Let me give an example. You are a principal in a school, and a given head of department has either died, has been transferred, or such a thing has happened, is not there. You see, you always will need another head of department. And you see, you'll need to promote one member within that subject area to become the head of department, irrespective of whether he has the competency either of what that role requires or the person who was holding it used to do. So you will promote somebody. So this is what Peter principle is saying. Employees rise up through an organization's hierarchy through promotion until they are able to reach a level of respective incompetence. So people rise within the organization to a level that they reach out to that position whereby they are in a position, but they cannot run that position. A bank is opening up a new branch. It needs a bank manager. It will have to have somebody become a branch manager. You see? You know, a teacher has been transferred. You need a new teacher to teach mathematics in Form 4. You'll have to appoint somebody to teach mathematics in Form 4, whether that person has that competency or not. So as you promote people within an organization, they rise. The next level, when there is a demand for promotion, they rise again. When there is a demand for promotion, they rise again. Sometimes in organization, we talk about, positions, creating positions for promotion. So they rise to the level of their incompetence, Peter says. Now, that is as regards promotions or bureaucratic promotions within an organization. What about attention to tasks? Parkinson says within the organization, something again we need to attend to when we give tasks. So Parkinson law explains how people will tend to approach tasks within an organization. And Parkinson will say, work will tend to expand so as to fill the time available for its completion. What this means, look at, for example, the assignments we've been doing. What Parkinson is saying, whenever a task is given within an organization, you move out as a head teacher and you appoint a teacher to do one or two things. Parkinson says that teacher is likely to ask you, what is the time frame that you want me to do this assignment? If I was to give an assignment today, for example, these things I'm asking, read this. If I was to say that read this and write this about it, you are likely to ask me, how long are you going to give us, Mwalimu, to be able to read and fulfill this task? You see? In whatever sector, if you are a banker, whatever the organization, if you work in an NGO, you'll give timelines. You want to reach given number of villages with this to tell them to send this kind of information. So your employees, your subordinates will ask you, how long are you giving us? Now, Parkinson is saying the time that you are asking to be given is not actually the time to be taken to complete the task, but that time that you ask is a time that you are asking in the light of dealing with your mental stress, So that if I was to ask you, read this article and make a summary within 1 week, within 7 days, within the first 5 days, you'll do nothing. But in the last 2 days, you remember, oh, this is supposed to be done, and you'll work at the last minute. You'll work at the last minute. What we call Parkinson's law within organizational behavior can be used to explain the concept of procrastination within organizational behavior. So Peter's principle is saying promotion or reward within the organization is actually given to the most incompetent people within the organization. Parkinson's law puts it that, when we respond to tasks, we tend to kind of, postpone our response to that task until the last moment. It explains what we call the procrastination principle. Now, linking the two elements in organizational behavior and with regard to bureaucracies within an organization, Peter's principle would argue that within the context of a bureaucracy, people rise to the level of their incompetence. And this will indicate the weakness of a bureaucracy. That if you are promoting, for example, you want, for example, quality assurance officer within perhaps TSC or something, you are likely to take the best teacher in English with the best mean score or the best teacher in mathematics to become quality assurance officer, but the best teacher in mathematics may not know the nitty-gritties of quality assurance. That's what the Peters principle means. So within a bureaucratic concept of organizational development, of organizational leadership, bureaucracy really puts the most incompetent people in levels of leadership. Looking at it again bureaucratically, Parkinson's law holds that bureaucratic staff increases in inverse proportion to the amount of work done. The lesser the work to be done, the greater the bureaucratic staff, the bigger the bureaucratic staff will increase within the organization. The more the work to be done, the less the staff that will be required to do that work, because the staff to be employed within the organization is not actually determined on the basis of the work to be done, Parkinson would say, but is determined on the basis of the stress, the mental stress that the workers put upon themselves. Any comments on these two principles at the workplace? I can see the hand of Chris up. We are just finishing. We are moving to the last slide. Chris?
Daktari, I agree with you on Parkinson's law.
Yes.
And I was just going to add last sentiments on the law by saying that those with no knowledge are easily rising to the power, or rather what I would say is those with knowledge have no power. And those without knowledge have the power.
All right. Very, very well, Chris. Very well. And another rejoinder, just one more rejoinder, and then we are done. All right. Yeah, I love that, Macho. Macho, I love that. So to conclude our discussion, just to conclude our discussion really is just a summary. In summary, within this discussion, we've been able to look at the concepts of organizational behavior in terms of the nature and its main features. We've seen them. We've been able to look at the contrasting perspectives. We've explained this within the workplace and work ethics. We've also considered the psychological contract theory, which actually talks about the unwritten laws, unwritten traditions within organizations. For example, you go to a school and there are given traditions about, you know, the incentives that the head teacher or the board of management gives to the teachers. And that explains the school tradition, why they perform, what the teachers do, what they do. But when you go there as a new principal, perhaps you are not able to do that and you find things are not adding up. On the other hand, we've been able to look at the relationship between performance, task performance, and the recognition for those task performance with respect to Peter's principle that explains to us about the performance, and the Parkinson that talks about this recognition. So with these things, friends, I want to leave this discussion at this point and request that ahead of our class, try and find time to read through some of those things that I've indicated within the various slides on specific issues. I thank each one of you for finding time to attend this class. I thank you and good night.
Good night too.
Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Good night.
Good night, Daktari.
Asante.
Good night.
Good night and thank you.
Good night.
Six.